to cut South Africa's access to trade benefits for agricultural products in 60 days. The threat was in response to the long-standing dispute over our barriers to US farm exports. The South African government last year imposed restrictions on American chicken, beef and pork following the outbreak of avian flu. Well, while the issues remain with the deadline here, government says good progress is being made in talks.
So near yet so far. That's how the government has described the current state of crucial negotiations with the US government over meat imports.
As we sit here now, what we've got in place is we have an avian influenza certificate already issued on our side. We have in place the rules for the administration of the tariff quota, at least in an interim arrangement. That was published in the Government Gazette on the 18th of December. We have, to a very large extent, and I think we can say for all practical purposes, concluded on the pork issue. On the beef, the issue that arose was the question of beef. Is it just for beef that is born and bred in the United States, or is it for beef that comes in from neighboring countries into the United States?
Officials from the Department of Trade and Industry, Health and Agriculture have worked throughout the Christmas holidays trying to reach a deal with the Americans, all in an effort to preserve 70 billion rand worth of trade between the two countries, 25 billion of which takes place under AGOA.
We are still continuing to negotiate, and our belief is that given that we have not yet, the bell has not yet rung, it therefore rang. It means therefore that people are still having a chance to continue to interact. Possibilities are that on salmonella we may be able to find. It is one outstanding issue that our ethical people are still engaging in.
However, the ministers have assured South Africans that the government will not capitulate to American demands to the detriment of public health in South Africa.
No government in the world deliberately or willfully exposes its diseases to any type of disease, its citizens to any type of disease whatsoever. I've never come across any government anywhere in the world that willfully did that. Government always protect their citizens against diseases.
Negotiations between South African officials and their US counterparts will resume on Wednesday. Mbongeni Mutwa, SABC News, Pretoria.
Well, let's now go over to the US. We're joined by Kevin Ozebek in Washington. Kevin, basically, Obama's deadline is here. It's lapsing. Nothing has been done yet. Is that a good sign, perhaps, for South Africa?
Well, technically, the deadline was New Year's Eve, December 31st. And from what we understand, negotiations went on New Year's Eve night very late into the hour. And of course, still no deal has been reached just yet. We did hear from a U.S. trade representative, press official today. He says there are still some outstanding issues and negotiations will continue. No word from this press agent if, in fact, the U.S. will start to put taxes on goods exported from South Africa into the United States. So we do know there is this meeting on Wednesday that will be on January 6th. So the talks are still continuing. Of course, the main issue that's still up in the air and the main issue that South Africa really has a problem with is South Africa wants to see chicken imported into South Africa from the United States be certified to be salmonella-free. Well, U.S. officials say that is absolutely impossible. And in fact, on the Twitter account for the U.S. Embassy to South Africa today, that account tweeted that the U.S. exports chicken to more than 100 countries. This is not an issue with any other country, and it should not be an issue with South Africa. The U.S. says the salmonella issue is completely can be completely stopped by just cooking the chicken. So the U.S. really does not seem to be moving that way or budging on that issue at all.
And I don't know if you heard our health minister, Kevin, saying that we don't want to bring in any food that could be a health issue for our citizens. So would you agree with me that the deadline has passed and it sounds like they're very far apart still?
Well, even though the deadline has been passed and we've passed the 31st, of course, we do know negotiations are still continuing. It's very clear from what U.S. officials are saying is that they do not want to see South Africa removed from AGOA. The U.S. is very firm in saying that it believes AGOA is good for South Africa, it's good for other African countries. In fact, we heard the U.S. Embassy for South Africa tweet out today that South Africa has a lot at stake here. So even though there is still work that needs to be done, particularly on the salmonella issue, U.S. officials are still moving forward with these talks, even though the deadline has been passed. So it's a clear signal here that the U.S. does want to see a deal reached within the coming days.
Okay, so talks on Wednesday. I will catch up with you perhaps after that. I want to ask you this. After Obama's threat, our president spoke out. He said we don't like to be threatened. We don't like to be treated as if we were a colony. It seemed like the rhetoric was rising. Has that calmed down, or is this still threatening perhaps to become an even bigger issue?
Well, when it comes to the specific AGOA issue, there is some tension here. The U.S., we get the sense from some of the statements that have been released from officials and some members of Congress who work on trade, they're slightly agitated by this, particularly the salmonella issue, because once again, the statement from the U.S. is that we send chicken all over the world. There is no way we can guarantee it to be salmonella-free. We don't understand why just one country, South Africa, takes issue with this. But with that being said, you know, the United States and South Africa do have a long history together. President Barack Obama has certainly tried to calm any tensions when it comes to this, even though there is this threat of possibly adding tariffs onto some goods. So the U.S., of course, wants to try to diffuse this as much as possible, and that's possibly why negotiations are continuing, even though the deadline has already come and passed.
Finally, Kevin, is this something receiving any attention in America itself? South Africa's stubborn stance in the view of these officials?
Well, this is getting much more attention in South Africa than it is here in the United States, and that's because from the U.S. perspective, this could potentially have very little impact. Say, for example, that if tariffs do start to be imposed, the U.S. could import macadamia nuts, wine, citrus fruit from Central and South America. So really, this is making many more headlines in South Africa than it is here in the States, strictly for that reason. The U.S. will be able to find other outlets for the goods that it imports from South Africa. And that is one other thing that we've heard the ambassador to South Africa, the U.S. ambassador to South Africa, say that really he wants to make sure that this deal goes through because he says he knows how beneficial AGOA can be for South Africa.
All right. We apologize. We're losing you visually, but thank you for that update, Kevin Ozebek from Washington. And I guess the lack of media attention there perhaps showing who has more to lose if this deal doesn't, if there isn't a last-ditch effort to save our involvement in AGOA. Well, government speaking out today. Let's hear more from Minister Rob Davies. He says that meeting is planned for Wednesday to outline outstanding issues.
As we sit now, we are recognizing that we are in extra time, that we are now past full time, if you like. We're in extra time. But the whistle hasn't, as of this moment, been blown. And we are hoping that the whistle will not be blown to give our veterinary authorities on both sides an opportunity to engage again. They have a meeting planned for the 6th. And the work will continue whether the whistle is blown or not, because the consequences of the whistle being blown would be that certain products that are currently enjoying access under AGOA, and those are the agricultural products, would be excluded. And we'd have to see the terms of that exclusion. So it would be a partial exclusion from AGOA benefits for a period of time. And if we still did not find a solution, then that would be ramped up, is our understanding. But we're also told that if there is a partial exclusion and we then do reach an agreement, there can be a very quick reversal of any orders which may be arising at that time. But as I said, we are not the ones that blow the whistle. We know we're in extra time. We are committed to continuing to work to find a solution that from our point of view would allow us to honor the commitment that we made in Paris on poultry, as well as the commitments which we've already made on beef and on pork. Allow us, in other words, to honor all the commitments that we made as part of the AGOA process around the 3 meats, and at the same time also to ensure that we do not pose unacceptable risks to our plant and human health in South Africa. That's what the issue's been all the way along, and it's to find that kind of a balance and to find that kind of win-win outcome, and that's what we as government are committed to continue to work for.
Data out of China today reigniting fears that the slowdown in China may be worse